Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Business Strategy Roundtable. Today, I have a friend of mine, James Abercrombie from Acronis. We're going to be having a conversation about what makes a great IT service provider. And instead of an interview about James's entrepreneurial journey, we'll do a career path journey and get a perspective on why James is a great person to listen to from an IT service provider perspective. A lot of our clients and viewers are in the IT service provider space, so it'll be great to dig in. How are you, James? Thanks for being here.
I'm absolutely fantastic, Zach. Thanks for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, man. I'm doing really well. Are you looking forward to anything this weekend?
I'm heading to Atlanta tomorrow. I'm going to go down for the Paxi Peer Group.
Okay, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Have you been to Atlanta before?
I have. I was in Atlanta earlier this year. It's one of my favorite southern states, if you will.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Before we went live, we were talking about authenticity, and I was complimenting your beard and your mustache, and you said, it actually just kind of does this. And I was reflecting on the fact that I've tried before and didn't quite get it to do what I wanted. And you made the point that there was a transitionary period where you kind of had to get through. Um, and we were talking about how being authentic and representing yourself really directly can be important, whether that be with your look or with people. And particularly, I think in the IT service provider space, it's important because there's so many different people that sometimes are full of shit and sometimes aren't. Talk to me a little bit about authenticity as it relates to you, because it was something that I was certainly drawn to when I met you in at ChannelCon the first time.
Yeah. So, I mean, authenticity, it comes down to whether or not you trust somebody. And I was talking with a colleague yesterday about, what are some of your values, right? And I think that trust is one of my biggest values, right? It is a fact that if I can't trust you, I can't work with you. So how do you build trust? Well, if you're going out just looking to get people to trust you, you're not exactly what I would call trustworthy. Like, why should I trust you? Why? Give me a reason. And then it comes down to kind of like the old saying, is respect earned or given, right? It's the same thing with trust. Is it earned or is it given? I feel that I trust everybody until they prove me not to. I feel that everybody has a level of baseline trust. Now, people who are going to get more time, right, are the people that I trust more, right? Those are the folks that I kind of align with and put at that table, right? But for authenticity, for me, it's just about not taking myself back any bit, not taking it or scaling it down a notch to meet somebody else's needs, right? And it's the same thing with sales. If I don't have what you're looking for, let's move on. Let's not waste any time, but chances are, if we have a conversation and we're real with one another, we're going to find that there's probably some use here, whether it be business related or personal related. And I think for us, when we met, we realized it was going to be both.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. You said something that kind of hit a chord, struck a chord is the way I want to say that for me, and it's the not reducing yourself or not changing who you are for somebody else's comfort in a situation is an important piece of authenticity. And I, especially in my time transitioning into the service provider space over the past 2 years and transitioning from restaurant and people operations into technology, really had to kind of face and experience that. Because for me, I had a ton of learned experience and knowledge that was really valuable to any business because you need people for most businesses. But I was in a space where I wasn't as comfortable with what I knew around IT, and I would come into scenarios where some people would look down on different elements of my knowledge. And if I allowed that to happen to either avoid potentially an uncomfortable interaction or to avoid making somebody else uncomfortable by either correcting or adding color to something. All I did was just end up smaller in the scenario, and in that way, I ended up less trustworthy because I wasn't standing in how trustworthy I could be. To your point, you talked about there being a base level of trust, and then you can either build on that or not. I was staying at a base level of trust instead of saying, "Wait, wait, 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 hold on now. Wait, there are elements of my character that there's more depth to." So I love that you pointed that out.
And to your point, it's your level of experience and education and knowledge does not have to match that of another, right? That's the reason why we're all here, to help each other in the community, is making sure that we're able to learn from one another. And your experiences are unparred by others, right? Like there's no way that I could say, hey, I've got the same experience as you. We've got some similar overlapping experiences, which is cool, which is what helps us bond. But ultimately, if I were to say I know everything that you know, no, absolutely not. I mean, a wise person once said that you never want to be the smartest person in the room, right? And that's never the case for me. I'm never the smartest person in the room. I'm filled with joy being around folks who are just so passionate and so, they're inspirational because they have their path that they're going down, and they're also bringing others along that journey with them. And that's ultimately what the community is about, right? Is making sure that, hey, I'm not talking down to you, right? We're having an even conversation. It doesn't matter if you're a tech, if you're a CEO, if you're the janitor, right? We're going to have a conversation, and it's going to be enjoyable. Whether or not we come out as friends, that's to be determined, right? Now, do you have to be friends to be able to do business together? No, but you're going to do better business if you're friendly, right? It's just, I had a sales guy once tell me, he said, I enjoy traveling with you because people enjoy being around you in your company, right? And I think the reason being is that I'm very inclusive. I don't care who you are. Let's hang out. Let's go play some disc golf. Let's do something, right? Um, Other people just find the job to be a job. And I mean, this is kind of a lifestyle at the same style. We're here to make things better and to learn and to grow as a whole, but individually as well. Right. And if I'm looking down on somebody else for not knowing what I know, well, then I'm not going to learn from them. And that's prohibiting me. No, I'm not going to let that prohibit me.
Especially in a space that's constantly evolving.
Mhm.
IT, there's always going to be something somebody doesn't know because everything's new. So if you're bringing an approach of looking down or exclusivity, it's just power games, you know.
Yeah.
It's two people that are saying you're a goofball will make you feel like you're a goofball, right? And
I
two
don't need people to say it. I just know it. Right. Just accept it.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, So tell us all a little bit about how you got to the point that you're at in your career and what you do with the Acronis, because I think it adds a lot of color to, like I said, why you're a great person to listen to as to what makes a great IT service provider. And you talked about the place that you are in your career, and that you're around people that want to be fostering growth, and you're around lots of creative ideas, and in a space where people are bringing each other along. And I think many of us in the world strive to also be in a place like that. So how did you get there? How did you surround yourself with such amazing
Oh.
people? And just give us your story, man.
Yeah. So I mean, what got me into technology was my father. My father worked for the government, for Northrop Grumman as a contractor. So I always had access to systems to break, right? And once you break them, you had to fix them. Well, that is essentially how I got to where I am today, right? I'm a tinkerer. I like to break things and I like to fix them. And it's funny that you ask about this journey because honestly, I was talking about it the other day in the sense of, my daughter. My daughter's 7 years old and she can work technology better than I can at this point.
Wow.
And it's alarming to me, number one, because A, she shouldn't be spending so much time on technology. We need to be outside, right? But then I think about when I was her age and how much I wanted a laptop, like an NEC laptop, right? I wanted to walk around and have my own laptop. And it's just like, why was I so interested in that? And the reason being is that it was constant learning, right? It was ever evolving learning. And looking back, when I was her age, my father probably looked at me the same way, like, why are you breaking everything? Well, at least you can fix it, right? Um, And that's kind of what got me into technology. I'm a big AV nerd. I love music. I'm a DJ on the side. And really, the reason why I took a job in IT was to fund some of the underground parties that I was throwing. Right. So when I found that I was actually capable of making more money consistently working in IT versus, promoting, I realized that I'd probably need to pump the brakes on some ideas of where I wanted to be. So I focused mostly on my career in technology, and I started in support. Right, I started in support for a company called Aperture Application Assurance, where we're leveraging VSS volume shadow copy services to do backups. And really it was a big deal then because we were able to compress data, we were able to offsite it, we were able to give people the ability to recover in a matter of moments, 15 minutes, if you will, in the case of a full site outage. And that company was bought by Dell. It was then spat out as Quest once Dell bought EMC. And the folks over at Acronis, who I'd worked with previously, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we know you're available. Let's get back together." So it was almost like Anchorman, where they got the news team to assemble. Right, they blew the big conch shell, and we all got back together. At that point, I asked, my hiring manager, who was, my director of previous roles, what is it that we need here? I know that we're a backup company. I know we do disaster recovery. What got me excited about Acronis is that there was no reboot necessary. I was like, oh yeah, dude, let's go. As a solutions engineer, having to time out a maintenance window where you can go and install an agent and reboot those servers, those mission critical servers, it's not exactly the easiest, right? When you don't have that step, you can knock out a POC very quickly. And I love checking boxes, Zach. I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do. So if I could check, yeah, go for it.
You like that? Do you just like the feeling of checking it, or do you like to actually get the thing done?
No, a little bit both, I think. I've done both. I've done physical lists where you actually get to do it, and then I also use like Notion as an application to kind of track my progress. Either way, being able to hit a button, being able to check a box, knowing that you've completed it and that you've done it to the best of your ability, that's such an amazing feeling.
The dopamine of completion.
Yes,
It's
yes.
That's
a really good one.
Yeah. That
well, I was 100%. And I asked that question, Zach, what is it that I can do to bring the most value to this company? And my manager at the time, his name was Joe, he said, we need people to understand our integrations. I said, well, why? He said, well, ultimately, you could do more with less if you're integrated. And that really resonated with me because I've worked with MSPs for 15 years, and the idea here is how do we help one another grow? How do we help one another offer more service without more overhead, right? How do we reach that operational excellence that we all strive to reach? So what I learned is that Acronis had integrations with some top RMM and PSA players, RMM being your remote monitoring and management, and also your professional services automation. These were the ConnectWises, the Kaseya's, the Datos of the world, right? Making sure that your customer relationship model is now being used so that you can onboard and bring on new services quicker and more efficiently, rather than having to say, all right, we've got a new tool, let's go learn the tool. Now we have to learn the console. Now we have to learn all these different batch commands. We have to learn all these different things. By the way, it's going to add more resource to your system, more resource load. And I mean, that's ultimately what I think most MSPs and service providers are looking to reduce, right? We don't want to have that impact on a system. We want to make it so it seems like nothing's happening at all, right? But if you were in a bind, we can help out on, the flip of a switch. So I found that if you're onboarding with Acronis by itself, right, it's like a 15 to 20 click process to onboard a customer. If you're using ConnectWise's PSA or any other PSA that has all of this data in it for your customer, you can onboard a customer and bill them automatically in a matter of 10 minutes, right? Instead of 15 clicks, you can have everything ready from you've just sold. Now you've got your billing automation going all hours of the day. So if anything changes, an hour from now, it's going to be updated in that database so that you can actually bill properly on it. And from there, I kind of took that to an integration-led sales type scenario with one of my product managers. And it's like, why is it that when we introduce this integration with a PSA or with an RMM, that our sales close rate is now 9 out of 10 versus 3 out of 10? Why is that? And I think it comes back to trust, right? They trust that the work is being done how it's supposed to be done. And that's a big thing around automation today is trust, right? Yeah, go for it.
Well, they also already. I love jumping in. Forgive me for interrupting you in your
No,
story.
no, no, no. That's the best
I
way to do it.
I'd love to jump in as it relates to sales and marketing things, especially in IT, because I spent, the past 18 months um, doing that over with Matt in Fort Mesa. You you talked about trust and integrations. That if somebody has an RMM that they've been using already, that they're
Hmm.
comfortable with, they already went through that sales process. They already have a relationship. Their team already knows how to do it, use it. They already know that what they hope to get out of the thing, they're going to get out of the thing. So then,
Hmm.
if you have that feeling already internally from another organization, and then that organization says, hey, oh, do you want backup? Hey, do you want this? Hey, do you want that? Well, we like these guys for that, and our thing works for it. You get to borrow that trust that you've already created, and the process of creating trust is not a slow process. I mean,
I
it's
mean, it
not
could be
something you
overnight.
can just do. You can't
It
just
depends. It depends. It depends, right? And
elaborate.
I think so. If you're just doing cold calls, yeah, it's going to take some time to build rapport.
Yeah.
The role that I'm in now, right? I mean, I really heavily rely on relationship building. It's hard to build relationships when you're not in person. If you're just texting or emailing or on the phone. So that's the reason why these community events are so good, right? So that we can go out and talk to these folks. But if you're going to, and I'm going to pull from one of my sales folks when we talk about our sports initiative packages, right? So Acronis does empower MSPs as well as ISVs to get their name and their logo up in different arenas, right? And we like to talk to peer groups about this. I'm sure we'll talk about it in Atlanta about how nice it is to have something that money can't buy. You get a sweet night at one of these arenas, you bring in some of your prospects, and if you're sitting there with your prospects close proximity for say 3 hours, if they come out of there not being your friend, right, either you've got the wrong salesperson there, right, or you just aren't the right fit. So this kind of goes back to why is it that people can trust and learn from one another? Well, it's because they want to be around one another, right? If they don't want to be
Because it
around
takes
you, they're
time.
not going. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Because you need to be able to read somebody's social cues. You need to like have your stomach growl just loudly enough for somebody to be able to like make you feel weird about it or make you feel comfortable about it. Are you gonna other me, or are you gonna make me feel like part of the group, or and those types of things in business. If you see somebody make a maneuver socially that you think you said this at the beginning of the podcast. There are people I would be friend that would do business with that I wouldn't be friends with.
Hmm.
But there are things that I need my friends to have that I also need my business people to have, my
Hmm.
business acquaintances to have. And it kind of goes down from there. They need more things to get into the friend category. If I see somebody in a social setting or over the course of getting to know somebody, not be honest about an obvious self flaw, be hypercritical about somebody else, uh, be not be willing to have any type of sense of humor. Those like these like little things where it's like, well, wait a second, are we human or are we not human? Because if you're going to pretend like we're not human, I can't participate with you. Those things take time to show. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like in a poker game, the flop, the turn, and the river. You get a little bit of time to like, is this person actually a real human being, or is this person pretending? You really do need that time, I think.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of humans that are pretending, right?
There's some pretenders.
That you've got your rock stars, you've got your average, and you've got your exceptionally average, right? So, I think really, and to kind of go back to the journey of my roles here, right? After learning how I could help MSPs, really automate more of their onboarding and their monitoring, the question became, what else can we do better, right? And with Acronis, the role has changed from solutions engineer into technology evangelist due to the fact that we are now growing our ecosystem, not in an outbound way, but in an inbound way, right? We've released what we call the cyber app technology that allows for all cloud applications to be seamlessly and natively integrated into Acronis, right? So if you are a large ISV, if you are a small ISV, it doesn't really matter. If you're used by an MSP, you want to be integrated into the Acronis platform so that our MSPs can leverage your solution, can leverage your technology and start growing the usage of that technology. And that kind of goes back to the whole trust thing, right? I mean, like if you're with ConnectWise, everybody's like, oh yeah, we know that ConnectWise rocks and we use them and we want to make sure that everything's all, situated together. Well, we've been aligned with ConnectWise for so long that we are still trying to figure out where together can we do better, right? And this is kind of like the punchline of the whole podcast. When you asked me to join, you're like, what is it that MSPs and service providers need to know? If you ever stop growing, if you ever stop learning, you might as well put your towel on the table, right? There's no reason to continue if you're not going to continue ever evolving, right? Because the threat landscape's not going to slow down. It's not stopping, right? Yeah. So if you're finding somebody who maybe learns a little bit differently than you, or somebody who takes a different approach, praise that person, because you don't want a bunch of yes people around you, right? You want somebody who is going to challenge the norm and bring to the table something that you're leaving. And that's the reason why you're bringing these people on board.
I love that point. You made the core point, continuing to learn, don't stop running the race. If you stop learning, that's just where you're at. And if you're running a race and you stop and everybody else still runs the race, you're gonna lose.
Yep.
Your goal, that's the tortoise and the hare, literally, except the market is also a bunch of hares, so you can't be the one that stops. So you've done a ton with Acronis. You've done a ton going from considering what people need from the business to then going out and being front facing. You went from being a solutions engineer and being focused on how can we deliver a better product to a different role. You talked about it being more inbound focused. What was that transition like for you?
It's ever evolving, to be honest with you. So it started 2 years ago, and I actually have a call after this podcast to do a solutions engineer call. It's more so like, when you find your niche, don't give up that hat. Hold on, this makes a good point. I was talking to a CEO the other day, and he was telling me that, and this also goes back to the point of my daughter being more of a technologist than I. The CEO, most CEOs, most CTOs, they start out as a technician, right? They didn't start out as a chief executive officer. They didn't start out as an officer at all. They started out as somebody running cable somewhere, right? And they are humbled by that. They remember the days that they were in the trench. Now, I've also worked for CEOs who don't remember those days. Those are the ones I don't enjoy working for, because they have a feeling that they are just holier than thou and that everybody needs to bow down and they need to do what they've said. And that completely cuts off the table, right? That stops allowing new resources at the table, and then you stop learning. So ultimately, the journey it's an ever evolving one. And when I was as a solutions engineer, it's more so, how do we make the masses understand the value of Acronis? And now it's more so, how do I understand the value of other technologies that MSPs are using, whether they're in use today or not? Like for a good example, pen testing. Pen testing is a huge one that people need to be utilizing, but they don't because it's expensive, right? And it's hard to manage. So how do we make that more accessible?
It's confusing in the market.
It's very confusing.
And they almost make it confusing. There's some of
I don't think they're doing it on purpose. I just think that if you can't show me a demo, right, and we're just going to talk about things, and then I'm going to give you passwords to the kingdom, and then you're going to go and brute force me, like,
I don't think that they're necessarily doing it on purpose, but I think there are some folks in the technology space that fall into the exceptionally average category, and they look at their solution or whatever, and then they look at the marketing, and then they look at, well, how am I going to sell it? And then the exceptionally average solution starts to be to change, to kind of shave the edges so that it fits in a box that it isn't really. And you're right. I don't think anybody's like, hey, I'm going to put this nasty thing in this box and sell it as something that it isn't. I don't think that they're doing that. but I do think they're like somewhere in between,
Yeah,
having a
I mean,
legitimate
definitely
solution.
trying to cut corners, trying to find best ways to make more money, and those it draws that fine line between sales and technologists. Although we're all salespeople, ultimately, right? You have technologists to make sure that the salespeople are being honest, right? Because I mean, a salesperson, they unless they're extremely technical, only know so much about the product that they're selling, right?
Right.
They know the low hanging fruit, they know where it's helped other customers that they've helped before, but are they going to uncover new use cases? Are they going to find things like that? No, that's the solutions engineer who's going to do that. That's the technologist. So I went from saying, all right, this is how we can make our product the best received, to going and talking to other technologies saying, this is how my MSPs would receive your product. This is how you can find success in that. So it's a weird transition, right? From going to wearing just an Acronis hat to wearing, more of a community channel hat saying, hey, MSPs need these services, but they can't afford them, or it's too difficult for them to manage them. They can't bring these services on because they don't have the right people trained on it. How do we fix this? Well, Acronis being the MSP platform where all of your technicians already are familiar makes it easier, right? Making it much more simple for you to do more with less. Now, if that wasn't what I was doing today, I'd be looking for something different, because ultimately I want to make an impact. I want to make it easier for us to scale businesses. And if that is taking a solution and making it more easily digestible, sure, not a problem. I'd love to do that, in fact, right? One of my favorite things is to find startups who are trying to figure out their demo flow and show them how their demo flow should go, or how it would be received, how they currently have it, right? So right now I'm still in that transition phase of being, that front facing, person versus that rear facing, making sure that we're still cleaning up things on aisle 3, right? But ultimately it comes down to, I'm learning more about other solutions that I was not privy to before, because I've not run an MSP. I've only talked to my friends who have run MSPs, and learning from them where they need help has helped me grow immensely.
Absolutely. There's a couple of things I want to see if I can hit on before we transition into and thank you for sharing your background before we
Yeah.
transition to the topic of the day. One of them is that you said something like 80 or 90% of folks that are in higher level management in the service provider space started as technicians. And it reminds me of a statistic that Domino's likes to share, that 95% of franchisees started as drivers.
100.
And that humility combined with, there's two things at play. There's humility of knowing what it feels like to be in the cornmeal, to make a pizza. But then there's also the confidence gained of having done it at such an exceptionally high level that you're then able to teach other people how to do it. And if you can, it's what you said, man. Your point about leadership allowing new ideas to be on the table, and the humility of having learned and grown. You learn and then you grow, and you learn and then you grow. And if you can create that for your business and continue to learn and grow by allowing there to be other thoughts, maintaining that humility. Well, maybe, like you said, I love when somebody comes to the table and thinks in a way that I don't, because it gives me the opportunity to try to look at the sphere a little differently and figure out where is this person coming from. And I thought that was beautiful. So you're in this position now where you're more focused on community. You're okay. This was the point that I wanted to make. You're largely authentic. And we talked about this in the beginning of the call. You went from being very focused on understanding how to communicate what you have, Acronis has, outwardly, as a solutions engineer. How are we going to solve this? How are we going to market this? To which is that's a I'm not communicating this well. That is a very authentic thing, because if you don't communicate what something is in a sales process well, if I tell you you're going to get a large pizza and it shows up and it's this big, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's our large. You're like, you motherfucker, this isn't a
Yeah.
large pizza.
It's
And then
$35. Why was that 35? Yeah.
yeah,
No.
exactly. So that being able to understand and then communicate requires all of those different things. So it sounds like you found yourself in a really perfect position. And that was what I was bumbling in trying to communicate, that you're authentic in the beginning. You found a role that utilized your authenticity. And then now here you are, understanding and hearing others and then communicating it back. How do you think you were able to get in such a position that's perfect for you? Because I think there are a lot of folks out there, either aspiring entrepreneurs or just other people that, are wanting to have what you have in a career. How do you think that happened, or what did you do to allow it to happen? And then we'll move to our next topic.
So I don't know if it was something that I did necessarily, but more an experience. So when I was working for Aperture, I was one of 3 support engineers, right? We're back in a dark little server closet, and we had the development team in another dark closet next to us. Well, I made friends with the developers, right? Because they were the guys who were listening to electronic music. So I'm like, yeah, let's hang out. Let's have some
I
beers
gotta start
afterwards, right?
sending you music, man.
You do.
I
Well, let's
was
get a
in the
Spotify
gym.
playlist going.
Okay, cool.
And so I remember getting fed up as a support engineer that our salespeople were selling things that we did not do. And then I was getting yelled at, right? I was getting yelled at as the support engineer because sales did their job. They'd sold it. It's closed. It's on paper. Now have fun. And
nobody wants to hear you be like, no, don't take the money.
yeah, no, that's not an option. That's not an option. That is not an option, especially not to your VPs, right? And I remember going into the VP's office and I resigned. I said, I'm done.
Shit.
I'm done getting
the
yelled
stress.
at.
You're
Yeah.
handcuffed. You can't satisfy the sales guys, and you can't satisfy the executives. So you just get you lose on both ends, and you're miserable. I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. You're good. This is a good kind of build up to it. So I put in my 2 weeks, and he told me no.
Oh, geez.
And I said, "What do you mean no?"
He really had you.
I was like, "You don't get to say no. Like, this is not. I'm not a servant. I can walk out that door. Tell me why you think no."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, you're capable of listening to a support woe. You're able to then communicate why that was an issue to sales, and then you're also able to communicate to the developers how to fix what that customer really needs, therefore giving us a new feature. So we're going to move you into solutions engineering." And I was like, what is that? I was like, as long as it comes with a pay raise, I'm happy, dude, because like I started at $13 an hour. I was happy with that. And then they moved me into a salary position. I was like 22. I was very green, very wet behind the ears. Yeah. And then that's kind of the reason why I started growing the beard, to be honest with you, because I became a sales engineer manager. I had like 30 folks underneath me, and I looked like a baby-faced little like 22, 23-year-old. So I had to grow it out, stop going by Jimmy, start going by James, and that's ultimately kind of what helped grow me into that role, because I'm now showing other people how to listen to the salespeople and correct them, keep them humble, keep them honest without screwing up a sales cycle, right? And then also explain to them why that sale's not going to close because we're missing X, Y, and Z. And then take that X, Y, and Z over to the development team and say, hey guys, we need this. This is the dollar amount assigned to it. What can we do? And I found that sweet spot of being able to be the middleman between sales and development. And apparently that's not something everybody possesses. So that's what's really helped me get to the role that I'm in today, because I'm not a developer, right? I'm not ever going to claim that I'm a developer. I could not pass Java. I could not pass C+. I couldn't do it. It's not how my brain works. But business cycles, money, dollar signs, that's how my brain works. It's not about code and being able to recall on these different variables and yada, yada. There are much smarter people who understand that, and it's their world. But being able to communicate with those folks it's difficult for sales folks, right? They're 2 different types of folks completely. So ultimately, being able to just kind of say yes to all projects and saying, yes, I may not be experienced in it, but I want to learn. That's what's got me to where I am today, right? Getting my feet dirty in places where probably shouldn't be getting them dirty, right? But you're not going to learn otherwise, right? How do you become an expert at something? Well, you got to try and fail, right? And failing is awesome, as I tell my daughter, because then you get to try something different. you know?
Yeah, you're not stuck in the same spot on the board.
Mm-hmm.
You were I want to kind of piece through a couple of those pieces. One thing that really sticks out to me is as a young man, you stood up for your convictions and you were honest and direct. And instead of just walking the fuck out or being like, fuck this place, you went in, you had the hard conversation, you said, this is a problem and I'm leaving.
Yep.
And because you were justifiably exiting, the universe opened up a better solution to you that fit. And I think that's an amazing and beautiful piece of the puzzle. Is you got to use your voice and you got to go out there and
You gotta stand up for what you believe in. Otherwise, what are you fighting for? What are you doing this all for?
yeah, that's it. Okay, so we know James Abercrombie now and why he is an excellent perspective on building an IT service provider. And I think there are probably a small percentage of people that I would more eagerly direct to other than you for what should I do with my service provider. So let's dive in. You said at the high level, learning, being willing to
Mhm.
learn, adapting, and that's I think true for all people. Talk to me about business functions and organizational functions, sales, marketing, hit a couple of the high level ones. What do you need to be able to do in those categories to be able to be successful as a service provider? What have you seen?
So I can speak to sales and all this stuff except for marketing. Marketing is a total different beast. And I know some exceptionally talented marketing folks, whether they be CMOs or just regular marketing specialists. That is not something that I take lightly because ultimately without marketing, you have no funnel, you've got no pipeline, you've got nothing. Unless like people love you for you and they just believe in you. Like I've seen that happen. Trust me. There are some solution vendors out there that are just, so well known that even before they've got a product, they've got a following, a cult following. And that's awesome because that level of trust has been built and they know that their feedback's going to be heard. So learning is great. Listening is a huge one, right? Listening to your target market as well as those around that target market. Because some of the best salespeople I've ever met, right? They can get a sale out of a random conversation on a plane ride, right? Just the person sitting next to them. They have no clue who they are, but by the end of that plane ride, right, they are capable of getting that person's mobile number, their contact information, and getting them hooked on, some solutions that could very well help them that they just weren't thinking about. And in my world right now, I'm so very focused on the MSP, but Acronis is focused on the whole grand picture, right? It's end user, it's enterprise, it's MSP, it's everything, right? How do we help the masses? And I think if you're looking at it with too narrow of a lens, right, you're going to be missing out. So listening to not only your target, but also those around your target is going to help you be a better service provider because maybe Joe is dealing with your regular things, but Sally now has to worry about how the phishing attacks that are going on her customers because she was infiltrated, or the wine rep, right, who's been hacked, right, and their website where you go and you order your wine from has now been infiltrated so that they can't do business. How do they know that your services are going to help them without having that conversation? Right. So just having those open conversations and listening, because if I'm just going to sit there and tell a wine rep, hey, this is how you use Acronis, blah, 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 it's going to gloss over and they're not going to get any value out of it. But if you understand where and this is a true story. I've got a friend who's a wine rep. We had to completely redo her website because it was hacked. Now, did I do that? No, but I know somebody who could. So ultimately it's listening to what their problems are because nobody wants to just buy another solution. They want to buy a better version of their business. They want to buy a better version of themselves. They want to pay into investing in their behalf, right? And just paying for another solution, that doesn't invest or scale anything. But if that solution is making you better, making it easier for you to sell a box of wine, or making it easier for you to understand where you need to be, that's what is going to help. And we're not going to understand where we can help if we're just pitching products. So we must listen to what the needs are. In addition to that, it's empathize, right? Empathy, making sure that even if I can't help you, I understand that's a woe. That's a problem. Just because I can't fix it doesn't mean that I don't care, and that's kind of the community related thing. If I know you have a problem and I can't fix it, and I know somebody who can, you're getting introduced to that person, no matter what, right? And I think that that's what really makes a great IT service provider is that there are some service providers who will just take on any client, and then there's some who have client profiles that you must fit. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago, Zach, that I heard of an MSP firing their first client, right? They're like, they weren't a good fit for us anymore. They just didn't fit our need. And I inquired why. And they said, well, it's because they won't use our stack. They refuse to use the whole stack. They'll use some bits and pieces, but they won't use the whole thing. It's like, well, why? Are you listening? Are you empathizing as to why? Or are you just saying you need to use all of this? Like, I understand, you develop a stack. You've put a lot of time and money and effort, blood, sweat, tears into figuring out what the best solutions for your clients are. But if they don't meet that, you're not taking them on as a client. You're still not going to consult. Yeah.
It's frustrating for me to hear that because I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been in the service provider camp, and I've been in the business owner camp. The other, not that service providers aren't business owners, but like small business ownership, where I've been utilizing service providers.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm using your services and you're saying that I have to use them all or I'm not a fit to be a customer, it sounds like entitlement.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm the one with the needs as the Domino's franchise, and I'm the one that's got to write the checks to you to, is there not an entitlement there? Now, I get that you can have clients that might not be a good fit, and I do think that building that properly is good, but it shouldn't be, the onus shouldn't be necessarily put on the client.
No, it's almost like the old adage of, the customer's always right. Right. And that's not true. I mean, especially in cybersecurity, it's definitely not necessarily true in most cases. But being able to empathize with these folks, with your clients, with your technicians, with the people that you work with, that's what's going to net you the most results. Because if you're just, mandating and laying down law, you're not going to get very far. I mean, maybe you'll get to, a certain area, but you will hit a hurdle and you will stop growing at that point. So how do we act on that? Well, we continue to expand the table instead of cutting off the table, right? We expand the table and we ensure that the people sitting at those tables, they're all from different walks of life and they're all from different understandings of what it is that is important to them, right? I mean, a technologist versus a sales guy versus a development guy versus a chief technical officer all have different goals, but ultimately the same goal together. How do they effectively work together? Well, they need to sit down and have a conversation. They need to listen to one another. They need to empathize with one another. And then they need to figure out what the next action is.
I'd love to weigh in here. This is actually the thing about business that's most interesting to me because it combines the interworkings of the operation with the people element, and understanding what's motivating the team.
Mm-hmm.
So in my restaurant operations world, one thing that was always extremely important was what the bonus structure was for the general managers, because the bonus structure for the general managers motivated what their behaviors went towards, because that's what was good for them. If the bonus structure motivated behaviors that didn't improve the business, for instance, achieving a number but not achieving the outcome that results in the number, which is like a pretty common mistake for a business to do. Like, we want this to happen. All right, well, I'll get it to happen around the work. When those scenarios happened, there were issues with upper management and the team, and there were issues with production and outcome. And what I'm hearing you describe is having a coherence and understanding between company goals and how to actually achieve that through each different department.
And I mean, you hit the nail on the head with motivators, right? If you don't understand what motivates your team, not just your internal team, but also the folks that you service, how are you exceeding their needs? You're just then checking boxes. Great. We know that we love checking boxes, right? But I also like to figure out how we can move the needle. And that's kind of what I love about the role that I'm in today.
That's great. That's great. What do you see service providers struggling with the most?
Adopting new services that are necessary, right? I think it's more so that the way, from what I've seen over the past 15 years, right? A lot of break fix technicians have started MSPs because there's a better way of life than being a break fix technician. Now, things have changed since they were break fix technicians. So while they may still be humble, there may still be some humility of, yeah, I've been in the trenches. There are things that they have not been in the trenches for, right? AI, for a chief example, right? I am not a master with AI, right? And I'll give a weird example, right? So Chat GPT. I'm a person who normally Googles something, or maybe I'll Reddit search it, right? I think that Finn
Or
put on
Reddit.
I think that Finn put out a post talking about how very effective Reddit is as a search engine, versus Google. It's not all Google.
Yeah.
So I would use Google or Reddit to try to find an answer to something. I was at a DJ gig setting up some sound for a fellow DJ, and she needed me to change a setting for the following DJ on the rig that we had there. I have the same equipment, so I should know how to do it, right? Unfortunately, I haven't played with that setting before, so I don't know. And I explained to her, I said, I don't know. I don't know. We're going to have to search it. I start Google searching it. She's about 10 years younger than me. She just throws it into Chat GPT. Literally just throws it into Chat GPT, and then it tells us exactly what to do. Huh? That's just not where I would have gone with it. And had I sat there for the next 30 minutes, I wouldn't have gotten this fixed for the next DJ who was about to go on, because I was just too stuck in my way. Right. So I think it's about opening up an experience, opening up your education, opening up to be not the most knowledgeable. Because while I should have been quite knowledgeable on that subject, it's still something that I didn't know. So we work together. Right. We listened to one another about where we understood it could work, where it couldn't work. And then we realized how to act. And we wouldn't have figured that out without her knowledge of ChatGPT. Now, I think there's a lot of business owners out there that are very excited to play with new technologies, right? But if they're not the ones playing with technologies, then they've got a right-hand man, somebody that they trust, or a right-hand woman, right? A right-hand person that is breaking those things like I did as a kid, like my daughter does now, so that they can fix them and then say, yeah, I trust in this because it does what it needs to do. You're not getting that if you're siloing yourself. So I think that ultimately that's what we need to focus on, is making sure that we're no longer siloing and that we are in fact growing that table.
Thank you for that. I'm really glad that you brought up AI, because it reminded me of one of the things in the middle where I had a bunch of thoughts and I only got through a couple of them. AI is a really interesting uh, new element to the equation here for service providers and for business owners in general. You talked about your proclivity to understand needs of different elements of the business, or how to properly communicate different pieces of what you guys do, understanding that communication piece between the service provider and a vendor, or the service provider and a client. All those things are strengths of yours. The empathy piece, the human element. I believe, and I want to get your opinion on this, I believe that as we go forward, being able to understand and communicate at the level of detail that you're capable of, with understanding on both sides, is what's going to lead to highly effective and repeatable outcomes using artificial intelligence at scale. And I think that's the direction that we're moving. So I think you're primed to be a leader in that space, and I don't say that just to be flowery, because God knows I don't need to be any more flattering than I already am with you. But what do you think about that? Because I do think that you're positioned to be a strong leader there, even though you may not go to it right away.
That's kind of, it's funny that you say that, and you're striking a chord for me, because what I said earlier about being able to speak between, like, as the middleman, there's another piece to that, right? It's being able to read who it is that you're talking to, right? Not just being able to read them, but understanding how they receive information. And if you're just spouting the same information over and over and over again and expect people to get it, well, then you're talking to the same type of people and you don't have a big enough table, right? So I always found it to be fun to find somebody who maybe doesn't understand what I'm saying, and then trying to find a way to relate it to a real world scenario that does make sense to them. So I think that's kind of to tie back into the AI thing, right? I don't like to write. I'm not a big writer. I read a lot of emails. I don't want to read anything after I'm done with work, right? But being able to take a thought and process it into different sentences that are then received differently by different people, but achieve the same goal, I think that's ultimately one of the big superpowers that people need to possess, right? Because there are different types of people in the world. Everybody receives information differently. Some people are hands-on, some people are textbook learners, some people just don't want to learn, right? Some people want to learn everything just a little bit.
Some people are defensive.
Yeah.
Some people are aggressive. Some
Yeah.
people are timid.
And being able to read that, that's the superpower. That's what's really going to help any business owner. Because if a restaurant owner comes to me and yells at me because I, brought my dog, right, I'm going to
Yeah.
be a little defensive, right? We're out on the patio, my dog's out inside, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we have these rules, blah blah blah. Maybe explain to me why. And instead of just coming out and yelling it, it's like, hey, just so you know, we have an issue with having any dogs out here due to this reason. And, like, that's going to be so better received than somebody saying, yo, you can't be here. Well, no, that's where the empathy comes into play, right? Have a whole soul. Think about how somebody else is receiving you, right? It doesn't matter if you're having a bad day or a good day. You need to have that baseline of, we're humans, right? We're here together, and how can I make sure that what I'm saying is actually heard by you to actually mean what I meant?
Right. Right. How can business owners improve that skill? Or
Ooh.
IT service providers, because you may be able to direct them to certain organizations in the IT service provider space, and then the rest of the business owners can chat GPT it.
Yeah, no, I've taken some good trainings. Back when I worked for Dell, there was some good management trainings. I think, like, Blanchard and some other folks. But ultimately, I think it comes down to peer groups, being part of a peer discussion with folks who may do similar things, but also alternate things, and knowing that you're not the smartest person. Like, you didn't come up with managed service providers. Like, you did not invent this world. You're just part of the world, right? So how do we make it better? And you're not making it better if you're just siloing yourself. So go to these industry events. Go to things like ASCII or CompTIA or Channel Pro or Exchange or any of these events where you have colleagues in similar scenarios discussing where they've had downfalls and where they find new opportunities. Because that's what's going to help, as Matt Lee says, raise the tide, right? It ultimately needs to be a joint communal effort. Otherwise, these threat groups are going to continue to advance past what we can solve.
Tell Matt I said hi when you're in Atlanta next week.
I will. We're going to have a long bearded conversation. I remember the first time I met Matt, really quick, last story,
Please.
was like Connect Wise, right? It was IT Nation Connect, I think, at the end of the year. And so Acronis and Axient were right next to each other. This is right before, not right before, now that Axient's part of Connect Wise. But either way, Acronis and Axient are right next to each other. And I have an old SE who used to work for me over at Axient. And he's there. So we're standing next to each other. It's kind of neat. And then I see Matt Lee show up, and he's got this big, beautiful beard. And I'm like, there's no way they've got
He's
a
a
bearded
commanding
guy.
presence too, and people.
Yeah, 100%.
He grabs attention.
And we've got another guy on our side named Mike Bova. He's got a great beard as well. Like, I mean, just get everybody together. It's insane.
You guys are freaking making me feel
I'll tell you the little bit that these guys keep telling me. So they've got bigger beard. They've got, I believe, a much more luxurious beard. But then they look at me and they say, "But you've got hair. You've got hair on your head." And I was like,
True.
okay, all right. So
You do have
once
beautiful hair.
this goes away, maybe this will get longer. It'll be more ZZ
You're
Top.
already selling it? I don't think that hair's
No,
going away,
no,
man.
no. But
You'll have that
ultimately,
thing
what
when
I was
you
trying to get at, Zach, is that I saw him over there, and I was like, "Dude, Axion has got a beard guy, and I'm not okay with this." And then I realized he was a PAX 8. I was like, "Oh, we're best friends now," and we've been best friends since.
That's awesome, man. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
good
Well,
times.
definitely say hello. Have fun next week. Safe travels to Atlanta. If you'd like to, or if you not, well, if you'd like to, and please give a little formal pitch for Acronis, just for folks who want to, after watching this, be engaged, so they can do that.
Yeah, I guess they should do that. So Acronis is a MSP focused platform. If we had talked maybe a few years ago, it'd be an MSP focused solution suite, if you will. But today we are focused on being a platform for all MSPs, whether it be for backup, disaster recovery, business continuity needs, whether it be for cybersecurity, whether it be antivirus protection, making sure that your email, M365 and Google is protected. Not only can we back it up, but we provide the email, security around that, making sure that all things are flagged and moved into silos. We also offer security awareness training. So ultimately, it's not something that Acronis does inherently. It's something that we've OEM'd because we understand that's something that an MSP needs. So as we grow our ecosystem, we're also growing our platform to make sure that it is more effective and more operationally efficient for MSPs. So again, if you've known Acronis back in the day as a break-fix technician, you knew about, probably True Image. You were able, probably saved your butt once or twice. Everybody I talked to is like, "Oh yeah, I love that." We took that and made it as a service, and everything that we've done as a company has been a direct result of an MSP's need, right? We did backup, and then we realized that storage was getting out of hand. Now we have 50 plus data centers across the globe. Then those backups were being, targeted, right? If your backup is getting you out of paying a ransom, then guess what? Their backup is now the target. So we also came out with the ability to safeguard that data, right? So we got into protection, and then we got into security, and now protection kind of falls under security, if you will, right? And it was just a logical move. So anything that you need to offer as an MSP, right? Listen to your customers, listen to what they need. Chances are we offer something. And if we don't offer it, we integrate with it. And if we don't today, tell me about it so that we can get it built for you.
Awesome. How can people reach out to Acronis or you if they'd like to?
Yeah, so you can go to the Acronis website. We've got a contact us now web form, or you can just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very, very, very highly responsive. If you need anything, reach
Evangelist.
out to me. If you see me at an event, come up and give me a hug. I'm a hugger. If you're not a hugger, maybe don't come up. Like, tell me you just want a high five. All right, because I'm a hugger. You're gonna get a hug. And
Me too.
I enjoy being in these places and learning from other people. So please come and say hi.
All right. James, man, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for being on the Business Strategy Roundtable today. Everybody, thanks for attending and watching. Next week, we're going to have Erica Blue from Austin Sunshine Camp on for a conversation on how to best engage with your local nonprofits. They are businesses too, and there are there are better and best ways to support nonprofits, and it's going to be a fun conversation. She's a good friend, and she does amazing work for low-income communities in Austin and children in need. So wonderful conversation next week, wonderful conversation this week. James, thank you so much. Safe travels, and hope we can have a chat again sometime soon. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Zach. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, man.